People ask me, how are you a realtor successful in the world's eyes, doing the volume that you're doing, and you're not working Saturdays or Sundays?
This is Matt Leicht. He sells over 20 million a year. He gets over 400 leads a year from YouTube. But
before 2020, I built my business through open house. That's the only way I knew how to meet people and get leads. You know, COVID hit, open houses were done. How else am I gonna get them? I tried mailers, didn't work, tried other marketing companies, didn't really accumulate to actual sales. So I was like, well, I think I should learn how to do video. I feel like I'm talking to a legend right now.
I feel like opposite. I feel like you're a legend.
Unbelievable. Your first video is your worst. Sometimes you just gotta do it. Every business is the exact same way. You've gotta try something and actually do it. Look at the tape, make the adjustments, and then go execute again. Learn from it, make the adjustments, and then go out and execute. Are you here to make money and get leads through YouTube, or are you here to be YouTube famous? Figure that part out.
You have a great quote. Agents that are producing content are the agents that are going to thrive in their foreseeable future. Why are you so big on that?
So I think agents that are gonna produce content, they're gonna be successful in the future. And the biggest thing is,
you have a great quote that agents that are producing content are the agents that are going to thrive in their foreseeable future. Why are you so big on that?
So I think agents that are gonna produce content, they're gonna be successful in the future. And the biggest thing is we live in such a media-driven society, and media is so easy to create on your own. If you wanna focus on one thing, then that's what you're gonna draw. So when I started, I said, what is it that I want to attract? Let's make content around that. And so I was working with this guy, Dan, from Massachusetts, and he was looking to move here, buy a secondary home. And I said, I like working with people just like Dan, looking for a newer house or new construction. So when I started making content, that's what I set out to do. And so I would ask myself the question, every video that I went to make, does this bring value to Dan? And that's what I would do. In my first year, I brought over 300 leads in of people just like Dan, because that's who I was trying to attract. It didn't matter about subscribers. It just mattered about what is it I want to sell. If I tell a new agent, what is it that you want to sell? You like beachfront condos? Then focus everything on beachfront condos. I should be able to call you and you can tell me the HOAs, the insurance, all those different things that are changing right now off the top of your head.
Because I come from like a sales background. You come from a sales background. I think sometimes, especially in real estate, we kind of forget the consumer, and real estate specifically, it's sometimes easy to forget that the consumer perception of realtors is not good. Like most of them think they're like a tour guide. What content does to separate you. You separate yourself from not just being a salesperson now, and you come from a place of value.
Right.
Like, what's your thought on that in using content to get started in real estate?
I think content allows you to be a real person to people. Is what it does, especially video. Your personality gets to be portrayed across the screen. And so then people will call you because they felt like they connected with you. And I think that just changes the game and the perception that people have. You can't fight it forever because people outward are always going to have that about any industry at the end of the day. And realtors, they get viewed in a lot of different ways as like the used car salesman, not dealing, honestly and having integrity and all these other things. Or part of that is because some realtors just post all these things about what they're doing, and it's all about me, about me, about me. And that's not necessarily the reality. And I look at it as, I know realtors that they will brag that they're on vacation with their family and they'll put on social media, sold another house today while I'm on vacation, or other things like that. To me, that is sad. If I'm on vacation, I am like unplugging and pouring into my wife and kids. If I lose deals or transactions over it, that's okay. Because what's most important is my wife and my kids and my relationship with them. I don't work weekends very often. And people ask me, how are you a realtor successful in the world's eyes, doing the volume that you're doing, and you're not working Saturdays or Sundays? And a large part is I made a decision halfway, into that first year of COVID where I was just working like a dog. It just was not healthy for us. You just tell people when you're accessible, they respect it. So I think it's just taking that perception, making you into a real person, and setting the expectation.
And you get like 300 to 400 leads a year from YouTube. In a market like Sarasota, they don't need to move to Sarasota.
Right. It's true.
It's
the locals would say that too.
The sales cycle in Sarasota is actually longer than most markets. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4 years before someone actually makes a move.
Yep.
So you have to have this like different mentality of following up with people, building that trust, building that connection. And it's this, almost like this whole different game in a market like this. With that in mind, you say that like, I don't work on weekends. Can anyone kind of set those boundaries?
I think there's a perception that when people are vulnerable, it shows weakness and people want to lead from a position of strength. But I would counteract that with being selectively vulnerable is leading from a position of strength because it makes you relatable. You're not the only one who struggles with that.
I think this is like huge within real estate because a lot of people look at, for example, like luxury real estate. You're in a high-end market.
Yeah.
There's almost like I need to put on this like face and facade and try to look like someone else.
Yeah.
But then you have people like who will show like their weaknesses. They'll talk about things.
Yeah.
But people feel like they need to be this person and they have to put on this suit. They have to look like this person.
They got to look the part.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And I've been frustrated in the luxury market, but I've tried to shoot content around it, and it is a bubble. It is a select bubble. And so then you're on the outside waiting for somebody to give you an opportunity at the end of the day. But I think it's frustrating when people put this kind of persona together. But it's also, I look at them as it's got to feel so taxing to always have to look the part, always have to drive a certain car, which to me, that's just not the way that I want to approach this business. Some people might like it, some people might hate it, but I'm not doing it because I'm trying to get everybody to like it. I'm just doing it because I think this is actually beneficial to sellers.
A lot of people have this fear around video. Were you always great on camera?
Glad you think I'm great on camera. I don't know. I think I've always been throughout my life in positions of being in front of people, so it became more natural to me. The first time when you're on video and it's just you and behind closed doors, you feel awkward because you're like yelling at a camera. And you're like, it's weird to think that somebody's watching on the other side. But being involved in church, leading worship in front of, hundreds or thousands of people, playing college football, and like I've always been kind of in somewhat of a small spotlight. And so it was never something where it was difficult, I think, for me. I enjoy it. It's fun for me. I love doing videos. And so that's why I focus so much of my business on it, because it's fun. I like it. And you know what? Then the byproduct is I get to have leads, I get to sell homes, and I get to make a living doing that. How to make creative videos, because I love it. It's fun.
You got into real estate back in 2015, and then you really got into video in 2020. Like, why video?
I've always been intrigued by it. Ever since I was probably in high school or into college, I didn't really shoot video or anything, but I've always been interested in, how filmmakers make things. Before 2020, before COVID, I built my business through open house. That's the only way I knew how to meet people and get leads. How else am I going to get them? I tried mailers, didn't work, did it for a year, tried other marketing companies like Facebook ads, brought stuff in, didn't really accumulate to actual sales. COVID hit, open houses were done. You weren't allowed to, you weren't going to do them. No one was going to come to them. So I was like, well, I think I should learn how to do video. The only difference between me and guys shooting at a very high level is the education. So if I'm disciplined enough, I can teach myself how to do exactly what they're doing. I just got to be willing to put the hours in. And so then I just started teaching myself how to do it. Then I started seeing success from it after months of just practicing and trial and error and leads coming in. And you're like, okay, like I think I can do this. And I like it. It's fun.
It's not like you're doing this, you're shooting video as a kid, like you figure out a way, you learned it.
You learn as you go. Your first video is your worst, but you got to start, learn from it, make the adjustments, and then go out and execute. Every business is the exact same way. You've got to try something and actually do it, look at the tape, make the adjustments, and then go execute again.
Why do you think people overanalyze video or like starting something like YouTube, and how can they actually start?
I think they overanalyze it because they're not good at it and they don't want to put something out there that they're not good at. Starting YouTube and shooting a video and then publishing that to the world to see is very vulnerable. What if you stutter on your words? What if you're not expressive enough? What if nobody actually watches it? What if you get a negative comment? What are we going to do about that?
There's so much on YouTube.
Right? They don't want to put a product out there that's bad, and then they're comparing themselves to Ryan Serhant, right? Like he's an incredible credible influencer. He was on a TV show. Like, you're comparing yourself to something that is so far from who you are that that's prohibiting you from actually starting. Pause and reflect and be like, oh, wait a minute. I'm comparing myself to there's only one of him in the entire world, and I think I'm him. And that was what I had to get over, was like, I would compare myself a lot, and how I got into videos through Brad McCallum. You know, I was like, oh, I'm not like Brad. Like, I can't go into a kitchen and just talk about like anything, but he can just go in there and be like, this is the most exquisite, and use all these words. And I'm like, it's a kitchen cabinet. I have nothing else to say. But that's not me. And so for me to try to portray to be somebody I'm not is not authentic. And so when I talk to somebody on the phone, they're like, you're just like your videos, like your personality and the way you talk and all this. It's like, well, because that's just who I am. There's probably people that don't want to call me because they don't like that, and that's fine. So my advice to anybody is, you got to start. Not going to be that great. That's okay. Just be who you are, because you're going to attract people. And then you know what? That transaction is going to be much more smoother, because you're probably going to like the other person you're working with.
When it comes to like YouTube, what have you found for yourself, what videos you should create versus what you shouldn't?
That's good. And it changes. I think every season it changes. When COVID happened and everything, if you went and made video walking around on an iPhone, you got 10,000 views, because everyone's at home just looking for something to do. We're not in that. So if you're going to go do that, it might not actually perform like such and such or so did. For me, what's working was, at that time, I was like, I can shoot model homes. I can shoot new construction things. Builders are going to let me in. I like it. The market I want to sell. So let me do that. And it worked. Now, there's a lot of realtors doing exactly what you did. YouTube, over 3 years, we've converted usually between 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 13 leads to a contract. What do I think going into 2024? I'm not sure just yet. So what are we doing to pivot a little bit differently is, in every video now, I try to say, moving to Sarasota. Is there a creative element in there that is different than what everybody else is doing? Like, do you want to be on a paddleboard talking? Do you want to do something else? Like, in one video, I did top new construction communities. This would have been a couple years ago. And, being a kicker in college, I kicked a football at one of the communities. And I still have people that'll be like, oh, you're the one who kicked a football in that video. That made you different. It was still my personality. So I am finding success in like a video we just posted. I was camping in a tent on a home site. And I think coming up with that creative element, one, it's fun for me. It's finding creative ways, but also still targeting the niche market that you want to go after.
I think there's a lot of ways to be creative. Like, most people, for example, do like the pros and cons of living in Sarasota.
Yeah, right.
One small tweak of that is like going back to like your personality, your stories, is saying like what I like and dislike about living here for the past 20 years.
Right.
It's just adding that personal element that's making that small 1% difference.
Or even tapping in your niche. If you want to attract investors, what are the pros and cons to living in Sarasota as an investor?
Because I feel like there's not many realtors that do what you did with your videos. Mm-hmm. A lot of people might look at one person and be like, oh, this person's getting 10,000, 100,000 views.
Yeah.
You get a couple 100,000.
Yep.
But you get a lot of business from it. How important do you think that's kind of played into like the business?
When you're going to produce any content, blog, video, whatever it is, you've got to be authentic. If you get to the end of your video and you're like, well, if you're interested in buying or selling, give me a call. People are tuning you out. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. Maybe you're doing a video about, relocating to a certain market. And so my call to action isn't going to be at the end of the video, hey, if you're interested in buying or selling here in Sarasota, give me a call. First of all, no one's selling that's watching that video because it's a relocation. So what a better call to action of, maybe you're just starting your home search and you're kind of exploring. You might be a year or 2 years away and you just don't know where to start. I would love to jump on a call and figure that out with you. Figure out what's best for you and your family, the timing, the type of home, and the area you should be focusing on. Go ahead and send me an email or call me at blah, blah, blah. That call to action all of a sudden has such a much more warm aspect and approach to it, where you're, one, a real person, and two, I do want to help you. And so let me actually portray that in a video. It might take longer to say, but it makes you a real person. And now, which one are you more inclined to respond to? This one of just call me, or this one of let me help you figure out your situation. Maybe you're sitting there today as this. And you're kind of calling out the questions that they have. And then you're providing the solution to it. And so I understand that just because you're calling me, you could be 2 years away from retiring. But you know what? I'm going to stay in front of you. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to put you in my system. And then I'm going to tell you after we have our phone call, hey, I will call you in 6 months. Literally did this a couple times yesterday in some text messages with some leads that I followed up with. Now I put a reminder on my phone. And when I call them again, Hey, Andrew, it's Matt. Hey, last time we talked, I let you know I'd be giving you a call at the beginning of summer. Here I am doing that. Wow, you're a man of your word, Matt. Like, that's what they're thinking. You did what you said you were going to do, and now we're going to hopefully do business together.
And you have a great quote on that. It's you'll grow to the size of your systems, some version of that. Why is like the CRM, the lead generation magnet, MailChimp, why is that so important?
Yeah, the systems are so important because now you don't have to think about it. If I have a conversation with somebody, I'm going to call you in 6 months. How am I going to remember? I'm going to write it on a notepad. So I'm just taking notes into that system. So now when I call, I remember, oh, this is where we left off at. Oh, this is this. And I tell people, they're like, you probably don't remember. Yes, I do, because I wrote it down in my system. I just tell them I have a system and I'm writing everything down. You just tell people, you're just honest with them of how the process works. They're going to want to work with you even more at that point.
A huge thing is you don't work Saturdays and Sundays, kind of like you said earlier.
Yep.
Like you don't work 50, 60 hours a week, but yet you still have this big business.
Yeah.
What are the guardrails that you had to put into place to allow you to be able to do both?
And so I think it's having kind of time management and figuring out the parameters and what's important to you. So what was important to us and my family was making sure that we had time for each other. Well, one thing that we have learned having a young family is our biggest scarce resource is time. It's figuring out the important things, developing a system around the times of those, and then showing up to do the work.
You were, as quote from you, a one-man band.
Yep.
And now you're not.
Yep.
Why do you think many people in real estate are so reluctant to hire someone or bring someone on, add that support?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, because I fell into this camp for, 6, 7 years. One was I wasn't producing enough volume where it made sense. And I think people are reluctant because one is there isn't a system in place. Their business is not sustainable. And so how do you bring on overhead when you don't have a business that's sustainable? But yet, how do you create a sustainable business without bringing out overhead?
Yeah.
The teetering saw. Which is where I'm such a get it done personality where I will do it all and I will manhandle this and we will push through this and we will win. Versus let me bring on some help. For me, it was I wanted to know if I brought somebody on that it was going to be successful. So how am I going to make them successful? Because they need to close the deals if I'm going to give up the deal. For me, video caused my business to become sustainable. Like I know this year we're probably going to bring in 300 to 500 leads through YouTube. And so that was a way that I know, like I've proven it to be sustainable. Some people, it's a website. If you don't have that in place, you can't really, without anxiety, bring on overhead. Anytime you bring on overhead, it is a risk, period. But there's more moving pieces to it. And my tension was this, and I call other people, and I would ask agents all the time. I would ask top producing agents who had this, overhead and massive team, like, great, you're selling $50 million or $100 million. How much did you make? Because I'm doing a quarter of the work and I'm making more money than you are. How do I want to go do that? I don't want to go do that because that just doesn't even make sense. We're like moving the other way here. And that's, again, what's the lifestyle that you want? Build your business to go attain that. I don't really want to have more business than that. That is not the life that I desire, of just a life of selling real estate and working and constantly feeling the stresses and the pressure of creating content.
Having the business, the consistent business to be able to hand over. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest thing that like YouTube has like afforded you.
Right.
So just because like you've been so great at it, I would love if we can kind of like just quickly look at almost YouTube as a masterclass.
Yeah.
How do you generate leads? How do you nurture leads? Then how do you convert? Because like you said, you're converting 1 out of 10. I think
110, one out of 13.
1 out of 10, 1 out of 13.
Yeah.
I think that would be really helpful if we kind of look at each stage and how someone can take that and plug in what they like into their business.
Yeah. So I think first is figure out your niche market. Super niche. The more niche you go, the better it's going to be. No, you're not going to get 100,000 subscribers. You got to get that out of your head right away. Are you here to make money and get leads through YouTube, or are you here to be YouTube famous? Figure that part out. If you want to go make money, figure out who you want to sell to and now create videos around that. Answer the questions that they have. For me, new construction. What are new construction closing costs? What's the difference between this community and this community? Oh, there's a new community opening. Like somebody comes to your channel and they understand what they're going to get. Now you got to come up with a creative call to action. For me, like I'll use PDF downloads. Like, hey, download this. I will give you this. The thing about mine, they are actually really valuable PDFs. Like they are extensively researched, compiling different amenities, other things where like there is nothing on the internet. And so now I'm going to put those call to actions in those videos. And now what I do is I put them into Follow Up Boss. And then I have a system in place where, Before I would send them, the first email would say, hey, Andrew, thanks for downloading such and such. If you had any issues, here's the link. I will give you a phone call this week to answer any questions you have. So now when I go call them, I say, hey, Andrew, it's Matt Leicht. Hey, I sent you an email a couple of days ago letting you know I'd be giving you a call. Here I am doing that. Half the time they cut you off, they go, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're actually calling me. You said you would. And so you just do what you say you're going to do. And if they don't answer, it's the easiest voicemail. You'd say, hey, such and such, I told you I was going to call you. And then after that, they're just on a drip campaign, probably referring you back to similar video. And then if I have absolutely no business, I might be trying to call them a lot more often to get them to answer. So now I can categorize them. And I will always categorize people into 3 different stages: the lake, biting, and hook. The lake is every person that comes through I've never met, never had a conversation with. You're a fish in the lake. I don't know who you are. You can be real, you can be fake. Then when I have a conversation with you and you have some interest in moving here, now I tag you as biting. And now once we're out showing property, you're hooked. It's my job to reel you in the boat. I go through, okay, how do we move people from the lake to biting to hooked and get them in the boat? How are we moving people down the funnel? What content can move them down the funnel? What follow-up? And that's the unique thing about our market is, again, people might be 2 or 3 years away. Not really in the lake, they're biting, but they're biting for a long time. Or you're showing their property multiple years. Are they hooked? Are they biting? But that's just where you got to really nurture your systems.
I'm curious because, like you said, people are nurturing for a while. I feel like this is where a lot of stuff kind of gets dropped because realtors will just put on an action campaign or like listing alerts and that's it.
Yep.
You set up tasks and you also book a meeting on a meeting.
Always book a meeting out of a meeting. I am going to tell you when we're going to talk next. I'm not going to hang up. Like the first thing I tell like any buyer's agent is you have to tell them when you're going to call them again. Or you're never going to get a sale. Are they buying today? No, they're not buying. When are you talking to them again? I don't know. So how are you going to know when they're going to buy? You think they're going to call you? They're not going to call you. Too many realtors in the state of Florida.
And I think that's like the big thing, like the big separation between like probably why you convert 1 out of 10 and like most people probably just convert the people who email and like phone call them.
You still got to chase them. You still got to go hunt and chase them down a little bit.
Like, so when I worked with this spec home builder, Arjun, we had follow boss. So I would always have to think like, what could I send them to either just get them to look at the email, respond, something, because it sounds like you do something where you send them value and then you figure out how to follow up with them next.
Yeah. Like if, let's say, you call me and you're like, hey, I'm interested in downtown condos in Sarasota. Okay, great. I'm not ready to buy yet. I'm not ready to do this. This is my parameters. Okay. On my website, I built it to be better than Zillow. Consumers don't know it yet because I can't compete with Zillow, their domain authority, but I'll tell them, I'm going to put you on a safe search on my website. Anytime once a week when something hits the market that's in your parameters, you're going to get an email. I'm going to get an email because I put the safe search for myself also. And so then when they get it and they get an email, now I can text them, hey, did you get that? Is that something of interest? Do you want me to go do a virtual showing for you? Because you're not here. You just tell people the system. That way they don't feel like you're not being intentional with them because you are being intentional. There's going to be people where you're just like, it's not a good lead.
What are some of the tools that people can put in place from that? Like they're creating videos, generating some leads. Is there anything else?
So between just drip campaigns, automations, and actually picking up the phone to call people, that's the other difference I think that realtors should have. The ones that are going to sustain success are the ones who are going to make it personable. They're going to pick up the phone and call you. They're not just going to I'll just let this drip campaign and eventually you'll do it. Well, if you have 10 realtors that just let a drip campaign and they just solely rely on that, and then you have one realtor, if you're a buyer, one realtor that picks up the phone and calls you, who are you going to work with? I don't care how great their drip campaigns are, how great ChatGPT says these drip campaigns are going to be. That person is going to work with a person who called them and actually had a conversation, and they continue to chase them and call them because they're earning the sale. You still have to earn the sale in this world.
Yeah, and I think doing the videos helps earn the business, but then you also have to earn the business on the back end too.
Doing the videos just gets your brand and your name and everything else out there. And the conversation, it starts a conversation. Now it's my job in sales of how do I actually sell you something? So somebody new getting into the business, do you like sales? You're selling the most expensive asset anyone's ever going to buy. Do you like sales? Have you ever sold something in your life? Because you're going to go sell $1 million house. I think it's the number 3 most sued profession is realtors. Video is one piece to it, but you also have to practice and sharpen your sales techniques. I was working for UCF in the athletic department, and I became the director of group sales. Everything I did to sell a $7 basketball ticket or a $2 softball ticket, I do in real estate. Every principle that I do.
What are those principles?
Follow up and call people. period. We use this system there. And then they taught me, okay, great. After you have a conversation with somebody, then you're going to call them again in a week. Then you're going to post follow-up after the game, see if they had a good experience, try to get them back out for another game, give them a promo. Like, you're going to continue to have conversations with people. And I promise you, if you're not being pesty, and if you feel like you're being pesty, and let's say you had a conversation with them, I get this one, I talk to you, then you never pick up the phone again. I'll send them an email saying, hey, listen, or a text message, I don't want to pest you. So this is going to be the last time that I'm going to reach out. Let me know if something changes, but I'm not going to continue to pester you. That's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to have a reputation for just that is pesty.
Being able to say no is like a big thing, just like that.
Yeah.
I was curious also, you talk about family a lot, talk about having time for your kids, being super intentional. Why is family so important to you?
I think it is one of the things that matters the most. It's not how many millions of dollars did you sell, what did you make, what cars or other things that you have. Now that's it. We're all going to die one day. Spoiler alert. When people are passing away, they don't care about the cars that they drive, the houses that they did, the sales that they did. The only thing that matters to them in those last moments is the relationships they have with their family and their faith. That is it. That is what it all comes down to. But we spend 99% of our time focusing on all the other things that don't matter. A quick story. So the first person that passed away that really, like, I was close to was my wife's grandfather. I remember seeing, like, his wallet sitting on the countertop. But then you look at that and you're like, we put so much value to this, but this is absolutely worthless right now. What do I live on from my wife's grandfather are the lessons that he had taught me. Doesn't matter how many houses he built. Doesn't matter any of those things. I'm reading this book right now called The Intentional Father, and I'm like, I got a long way to go. But I'm at a part right now where he talks about, like, taking his son on, like, a journey of, like, what made him who he is today, the dad. And how can he ever expect his son to know him as a father if he's never going to bring him into the hard times when he was a kid or bring him to those places? And I was like, we have such a society that loses so much sight in all of that, that I think, like, that is such a meaningful part of life. And so for me not to value and protect my family is just like, that's like a crime to me. And so that's why I put so much emphasis, on my wife, on our kids, on our family.
Two selfish questions, because we just got married. We got married like a year or so ago.
Yeah.
And we're looking to have kids in a couple of years. I have a lot of big ambitions personally. Obviously, I'm still young, still early.
Yeah.
And I'm sure things will change. Like, we got a dog, and that thing is like the pride and joy.
Yeah. We have one of those. I think I forget to feed it sometimes now.
When it comes to, like, what I think about on my deathbed, what I want to leave.
Yeah, your legacy.
The life that I want to live. I look at, like, my grandfather, kind of like you've mentioned, and I see, like, everything that he's learned, everything that he's accumulated.
Yeah.
And that kind of bred video and content for me was because I never wanted to have that feeling.
Yep.
I wanted everything to be shared, everything that I learned to be there for my kids. But it can come at a cost for both. But I don't want it to come at a cost. I want to build the business I have, but also have a great family.
Yeah. That is the $1 million question. I think you have to define what success is, and success changes depending on seasons. Like, when my wife was pregnant with our third kid, she was super, like, sick, and everything made her nauseous. So she couldn't cook. She loves to cook. And here I am, still not having, like, overhead staff. It's me creating, editing, making phone calls, selling. Like 40 houses a year on my own. And in this COVID time, I was like, I'm a builder. I feel like I am most at peace when I am building something. And so then after I go build something, now I'm looking for what's next. And that's like the crime in me a little bit. Like, I'm always looking for what's next rather than being content. And content is a choice. Choosing to be content is a choice. And so what I had to define as success during that season, and it was a season of 9 months, is my wife taken care of? Are the other 2 babies fed, and, like, clothed and diapers and all these things like that? But, like, that's success. Success wasn't going and selling houses or bringing on new clients, even though the world would say that. Success is not measured from money. Success is measured by so many other factors.
You also mentioned something kind of big, is that bringing your kids kind of on the struggle with you, I think, is what you said. For example, I have a fear that, like, never want to raise the kids to be, like, selfish and, like, not know how to earn their own. And the biggest thing I think for that, like, for me, was I've struggled. Like, Sure, yeah, I grew up in a great family, like great like situation out of my own personal decisions and things throughout life. Like I dealt with my own struggle, and I think that's built me who I am today.
Yep.
And how do you think through like teaching your kids and giving them the tools to be like, I don't want to say like who you want them to be because they never will, but like how do you make sure that they go the right path?
I think you can only do what's in your control. Like my prayer for my kids is, and I'll say this out loud to them, when I'm rocking my youngest to bed, he's 1, so he doesn't know what I'm saying, but it's just that, like, my prayer is that I will help you be the man that God created you to be. That's not me, but I have total different interest. Like, one of my kids, not so much interested in sports, and I'm like, oh, come on. But that's just not who he is. And so I think it's helping them learn how to communicate frustrations. Adults don't know how to communicate frustrations. Kids are tantruming all the time. But if we can start instilling the practice of helping them learn how to communicate frustrations, that's going to help them just throughout life. If I can talk about what I'm going through, like my high school football coach passed away a couple weeks ago. And so I'm putting my oldest to bed, and, I tell her, I'm like, hey, Daddy's sad. Why is Daddy sad? And, well, because my high school coach, how you had a soccer coach, he died. And her eyes just big. What? And I explained to her, and I talked to her about it. I wasn't raised that way. I'm going off of the family mold. I wasn't raised in an emotional family culture where we talked about more emotional type things and what you're going through emotionally. And a large thing when my wife and I got married was she didn't know how to read me because I was like a poker face. She didn't know if I was upset, if I was frustrated, if I was dealing with fear and anxiety, because I wouldn't show it. And part of that's the athlete in me, is you just don't show emotions and you just keep moving ahead and what's next. But if you're able to bring in your kids, now obviously, you're not talking to a 6-year-old or a 3-year-old about, certain things. It's got to be age appropriate. But I think you got to be intentional in how you want to bring them along that journey. What were the things that you struggled with in middle school? I'll tell you what, it's going to be worse when they get to middle school. So you can choose to influence them or have somebody else influence them. It's your choice. I want to take that and have that awkward, hard conversation, and my wife and I be on the same page of how are we going to talk about these things that you're going to be exposed to right now. Let me kind of give you a preface for it. That's being a good dad. It's not shying away from something that they're going to encounter. It's leaning into what they're going to encounter. And you as the dad and the parent, you get to reframe it for them. So I think it's just choosing to be intentional, and being intentional is difficult because it's going to have difficult conversations, uncomfortable conversations with your kids.
Yeah, that's true. If people want more, where should they go to like follow you or message you?
I would say just my website, mattleicht.com. You can spell my last name, it's German. You can spell it, you can find me. My website's probably the best because I'm not huge on social media. Like, I don't have Instagram on my phone. I will get to messages maybe once a week on it. But probably just my, mattleicht.com, my email's there. That's probably the best way that people can get in touch with me.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
Thanks.